Good evening, one and all. How are we? Jack Reeve, Norwich City here, back for a live video on this rather glorious Thursday evening. I hope I find you well and winning what has been a wonderful day. There's probably three bits of news that I would have liked to have heard today. One, that I'd been given a job on the Great Yarmouth Tourism Board. Two, I'd won the Euro Millions. Three, Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber are open to new contract negotiations at Norwich City. I received one of them bits of news today, and that is the latter. We shall be discussing Daniel Farke. We shall be discussing Stuart Webber during this stream this evening. As Sarah says, I will drink to that. So will I, Sarah. I've got my Lakens. You can get your Lakens. It's 20% off in the description. Are you bored of me saying that yet? Surely you're not bored of getting money off Amazing Ale. You may be bored of me saying about Lakens. I hope you're all well this evening. Hello to Chloe. Hello to Kieran. Hello to Ashley. Hello to Ollie. Hello to Sean. Hello to my mum. Hello to my Auntie Kay, who's watching from South Wales. Of course, South Wales prime for some playoff action next week when Swansea take on Barnsley. Really looking forward to them playoffs. But what I'm more looking forward to at this moment in time is, of course, Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber. Stuart Webber has done some press today, ITV, BBC, EDP, not us. And there's been much discussion surrounding his future, Daniel's future, how the summer looks, how the Premier League looks, and how, recruitment looks going into the Premier League. We've been here before, right? We've been here. We've seen promotion back to the Premier League with Stuart and with Daniel. Last time it wasn't too successful. This time we're hoping that it is more successful. Mark, hello Mark, afternoon, well timed going live, my conference period. Please don't let me distract you from work, but this is good news to be distracted by. As Christopher says, interesting interview. Yeah, let's dive into it then, shall we? So I've been able to read the article on the EDP, Michael Bailey's piece on The Athletic. I watched the interview on ITV Anglia and heard part of the interview on BBC Radio Norfolk. So I feel like I've done the spectrum of Stuart Webber media. And Stuart Webber, I mean, I've been lucky enough to speak to Stuart a couple of times on camera, a couple of times off camera. And he's always struck me as a man that doesn't necessarily have an agenda going into these interviews. Now, a lot of the time, especially in sport, especially in football, the likes of Stuart, the likes of Daniel will be briefed by a media person at the club to say, these are the questions you can expect, and they will be given time to prepare for it. Stuart, no different. But it always strikes me that Stuart is willing to go away from the narrative, willing to put himself on the line, willing to put others on the line for the truth. And I think that's really important. And I think it gives Stuart Webber an element of trust, because we know that he means well, he has a proven record, and if things do go wrong, he's got the trust of Norwich City fans because he is just so brutally honest. And more importantly, he's got the trust of Delia Smith and Michael Wynne-Jones, who pay his wage and who can essentially hand him a P45 if they require. That won't happen with Stuart Webber. What we're now worried about is contracts. Both Daniel and Stuart's contracts expire until June 2022, so the end of next season. So we have one season left in the current contract of Stuart and Daniel. Now, most of the talk this summer will be surrounding Todd Cantwell, Emi Buendia, Max Aarons, maybe Timu Pukki, like the young talent in this squad. Oliver Skipp, not our player. We want to bring him back. Like, player talent is what gets in the press. That's what creates headlines. I'm of the belief, maybe not necessarily on the pitch performances, but the long-term future of this football club will be defined on whether we can secure the services of Stuart Webber and Daniel Farke for another 3 years, let's say. Certainly beyond this season. Now, Stuart Webber has worked at Burnley before. He oversaw recruitment for Sean Dyche when they last got promoted to the Premier League, and they have been there ever since. What was that, 2014, 15-ish, 16? And Stuart Webber made a point in interviews that, Burnley only picked, I think it was 2 points up in their first 7 games of this Premier League season and still survived. So they're doing things in the right way. And they've also built up this robust resilience that can mean they can weather storms and still come out of it. When Norwich City went through a storm last season, we never looked like coming through it. Certainly off the back of Project Restart, Norwich City lost games and a consistent run of games, and we just never looked like getting back to winning ways. Burnley were able to do that. Anyway, I'm getting away from things. We have a year left of Daniel and Stuart in the current way, in the current contract. And my thinking was, prior to today, maybe with Daniel, definitely not with Stuart, we're not keeping them. I didn't think we would see Stuart Webber beyond next summer, because he has been so open with his career progression. He said he wants to work abroad. He says that Norwich, won't be the club he retire at, and I think everyone is very aware that Stuart Webber and Daniel Farke will go on to bigger and better things than Norwich City. I'm sure that Daniel Farke could find a top club in Germany with no real issue. Maybe even this country. Stuart Webber could certainly find work. And he said in his podcast with Jake Humphrey on the High Performance podcast that he turned down a big club the summer just gone. He is a man of his word. He's a very loyal servant to this football club. He signed up for a contract, and he will see that contract out. He's also said if Delia and Michael come Christmas think things will be, best parted away from the club, he will walk away. So we've got that. In terms of Daniel Farke, Stuart said, we'd like to extend it. He'd like to extend it. Now we'll have a conversation again over the summer. I spoke to Daniel during the March international break about where he is at and what he was thinking in terms of his career. Obviously, that will stay private, but we agreed to speak at the end of the season, which we have done, and would like to enter into a new contract with him. Now, that's punchy. That's not saying he might not. That's saying he wants to stay. And if Norwich City and the board are willing to keep him, then he's pretty much here. He's happy to do that. He loves it here. And obviously, we love him. It's a real mutual respect, which is sometimes rare in football. I think he knows he's been backed in difficult times. That's an important point. And we now know he's backed us in very difficult times. I'm sure in 10 to 15 years or whatever, people will look back and say he's probably one of the greatest managers to ever manage this club. Well, you can put him in that list already, right? 2 promotions in 3 seasons. Very few have done that in Norwich City. Very few have achieved things to the level that Daniel Farke has. Neil says, I would be happier about Stuart and Daniel extending their contracts than promotion of the title. Wow. I was 100% at peace with them both leaving when their contracts ran out. Just expect them to move on. Yeah, me too. Me too. And I saw these Stuart Webber, interviews today, and I must admit, I didn't really read them or watch them at first, because it's just going to be pithy speak about Max Aarons and then Todd Cantwell, and then forgot that this is Stuart Webber. And every interview he does, there's something big in. And he's not willing to hide, and he's willing to speak his mind, and there is just no ego or agenda with Stuart Webber. And I think Norwich fans have really come to love that, and the fact he's delivered year on year, really. So this is big news for Norwich City. This is essentially Stuart saying Daniel wants to stay, and contract negotiations are not specifically underway, but they've had the chat. And Stuart Webber, who I really didn't see staying after this summer, is saying that he would, if the club want him, also like to stay. I'm just trying to find the quote here. There was here we go. So Stuart's obviously said multiple times that he wants to go abroad. Now, this was a really interesting one. He said, it's definitely not the time to go abroad with the pandemic. We also need to find out the impact of Brexit on British people who want to live and work abroad. I've never hidden the fact that I want to work abroad, but at the same time, I'm not there chasing something that I want to walk straight into a job in 12 months' time. If there's not a job, I'm also comfortable having time out. Now, That pandemic line's a really interesting one. He's got a family, a young family. He's settled at a Premier League football club. He will be ambitious and he will want to go on to bigger things than Norwich City. We know that. He hasn't hidden from that. But the fact that there's a pandemic, it's difficult to travel to and get into other countries, let alone work there and live there, that will naturally play onto his mind. I think we sometimes forget that as football fans. We forget the logistics around work, right? It's the same thing with players. If we're signing a player from abroad, that's a big deal. They have to move, they have to get visas, they have to uproot families, they have to learn cultures and languages. Like these things aren't easy. We just assume it's almost like a FIFA thing where you just transfer them and it just happens. There's a lot of thinking that goes behind this, and Stuart's obviously looked at the current state of the world and gone, actually, like, I think I'm kind of good here. And also, Stuart always strikes me as a man that wants something else to go on to and achieve. And there is unfinished business at this football club for Stuart Webber. He's yet to prove that he can get the recruitment right in the Premier League. And if he does get the recruitment right in the Premier League, then how do we sustain that? Because we've been to the Premier League before. We've stayed in the Premier League before. Paul Lambert did it. Chris Hughton did it. Like, that's been done. How do we now kick on and become a sustainable Premier League football club that can make big money signings and make them work? You look at our record signings: Stephen Naismith, flop. Tim Close, not a flop, but was he worth £10 million? Probably not. Ricky Van Wolfswinkel, flop. Leroy Fair, flop. Like, when we start spending big cash, things start to go wrong. The brilliant signings in the recent decade: Emi Buendia, Timu Pukki, Tim Krul, Grant Holt, Wes Houlihan, like players on frees or hundreds of thousands of pounds, because we have the ability to take risks and unearth gems. And some of them work and some of them don't. For every Wes Houlihan, you'll get a Marley Watkins. But when you screw up on a big money signing for a Norwich City, like Ricky Van Wolfswinkel, who scores 2 goals, or like Stephen Naismith, who just never really fitted, you can't make too many of them mistakes. So we really need to get that right. And I think that will be a chip on the shoulder of Stuart Webber, because if he leaves now, or leaves at the end of the summer after a relegation, let's say, 2 promotions and 2 relegations, if I'm the chief exec of Manchester United, for example, and I'm going, well, you managed to get them up, but you didn't manage to keep them there. Now, of course, there's nuance to this with, well, we don't have a massive budget, etc. But I think that will be the little thing in the back of Stuart's head going, come on, you need to stay here and you need to do some damage. There we go. Dubai Canary. Hello, my friend. Let's get some questions on. I've been rambling for 15 minutes now. I'm sure you're bored of my voice. Stephen Dewing. Hello, Stephen. How are you? Forget Norwich re-signing Skip or Buendia. Signing an extension, getting Stuart Webber on a longer deal will be the best piece of business the club can do this summer. That's fascinating. And Stephen, I think a lot of people will agree with you. And I do, to an extent. I look at this from a slightly different perspective, right? Manchester United, Liverpool are playing right now. Am I bothered to watch that game of football? No. I genuinely couldn't be less fussed. I don't think I've watched a full 90 minutes of football away from Norwich City this season. I just haven't got the buzz for Premier League football. I just can't buy into it at the moment. And yes, I'm a Norwich City fan, so I will always watch Norwich City. But there's an even bigger why to this now. This isn't just on the pitch. If we were to go down next season, yeah, it sucks. We get over it, because there is a bigger thing to Norwich City. We are buying into a bigger thing than the 90 minutes on a Saturday. We are buying in to the academy graduates. We're buying into Colney, developing and being this truly revolutionary for what Norwich City is seeing. We're buying into the charity work that's being done in Norfolk. We are building a community, and of course that community was here prior to Daniel and prior to Stuart, but they have just accelerated it. They've taken it to the next level. We have got a why, we've got a meaning, we are winning in our own way, and that feels so brilliant. We've been through relegations doing it our way, and we've been through 2 promotions doing it our way. And that feels so brilliant that there's a bigger meaning. So Daniel staying will, of course, affect things on the pitch, and Stuart staying will, of course, affect things on the pitch. Could we stay up with a different manager? Possibly. We certainly got a better chance with Daniel Farke, but for the long-term sustainability of this football club, we need to keep Daniel and Stuart here for as long as possible, in my opinion. And hopefully with the news today, that could be possible. Here he is. Here's Daniel. I'm going nowhere. Neither is the deer on deck or football heaven. There we go. I found it really interesting that I speak about brutal honesty, right? And Stuart Webber was very brutal with Emmy, with Todd, with Max. He said if they all leave, it'll be sad, but it will just mean more money to reinvest back into the squad. And I think that's the beautiful thing. Like, we might be absolutely distraught when Emmy Buendia leaves. We will be, because he's a majestic footballing talent who's provided so much joy and jubilation for Norwich fans over the past couple of seasons. I don't think Stuart would be that fussed if he went, because he would know he's got the right price. He would know he's flipped a player from £1.5 million to 30 million quid. Like, that's excellent business. And I think he would be confident that he could reinvest that £30 million into 2-3 players who might not have the same direct impact as Emmy Buendia, but collectively could have an impact. And that's what I like about Stuart Webber. I don't think he is emotionally connected. Of course he is. He loves this football club, but he doesn't look at it in the same way as we do, which I think is really powerful, actually. Jonah, we can't take Webber for granted. His honesty, intelligence, and focus are second to none. I can't say enough good things about that man. I think you're spot on, Jonah. I really do. I genuinely adore Stuart Webber. I think he's a marvelous businessman. I think he's a marvelous person. I've been, as I say earlier, like, lucky enough to spend time in his company, as I'm sure a lot of you have done. Or I think just by watching podcasts and interviews and listening to stuff with him, you kind of feel like you know him, because that's what he's like. He's very honest. He's very real. But I think the thing that we maybe don't see much of Stuart Webber, he takes like his personal development incredibly seriously. His office, I went up to Colney for a coffee with him a couple of years ago now, and his office is full of self-development books. He's very well read. He listens to a ton of kind of podcasts. And when you've got a man that takes his development that seriously, that rubs off on the wider group, and people buy into that. And I think we're seeing that, or we have seen that, and I think we will continue to see that from Stuart Webber. These are the rumours I love. Rumour has it Skip's apartment landlord, whilst he has been staying in Norwich, has not been informed of any potential return to Norwich in the future. Or maybe he's buying a big mansion Harvestow game, because, we'll be bringing him back a bit more money, Premier League money. He doesn't need that little apartment anymore. He's going to be banging into a 5-bed house in the Golden Triangle. I think the Oliver Skip situation is another fascinating one. There's so much up in the air this summer, which you can be overwhelmed about or you can be excited about. The potential that Oliver Skip could be with us in the Premier League is massive. I've seen rumours surrounding, is it Billy Gilmore, Charlie Gilmore, one of the Gilmores at Chelsea, a loan deal for him. I think there's a really good chance we bring Oliver Skip back. I really do. I mean, Stuart's made it clear that he wants him back. I think I saw some quotes today. It might even be in this article that I've got up here, that they've talked to Spurs and they've talked to his agency surrounding bringing him back. I don't see anyone losing. I really don't. I don't see anyone losing. I don't see Tottenham losing. I don't see Oliver Skip losing personally, and Norwich City certainly can't lose from having him in the squad. And I think the midfield, we're getting away from Webber and Farke here, but it's fine. The midfield is suddenly the area of the pitch where you look at and go, oh, wow, we are really exposed. Tete's gone. Vrancic is gone. McLean's going to be injured for the start of the season. Skip's gone. Suddenly you fall light from what we were in the Championship, and you're going up a level. We're not playing against Rotherham anymore. We're playing against Manchester City, and it's really important that we're set. I think there's actually going to be quite a lot of ins and outs this summer, because you look at the likes of Marco Stiepermann, Onel Hernandez, Puemaswa Poeta, like players that have been, maybe not so much Poeta, but Stiepermann, Hernandez, who else in there? Zimmerman, like that kind of first wave, that first era of players. They were signed on like 2-3 grand a week in the Championship, where we were expecting to be mid-table. We're 3 years down the line and we're playing in an incredibly competitive Premier League where, you know, players that are worth 40 million quid are sat on the bench. You get to a stage in a business's or a club's journey where people, and it sounds brutal, but get left behind. Can Christoph Zimmermann cut it against Phil Foden? No, he can't. Like, it's as simple as that. Can Marco Stiepermann, and I'm talking about consistently over the course of a season, can Marco Stiepermann carve out chances against Pep Guardiola's defence? No. And that hurts, because these have been players that have been brilliant servants, and this isn't you know, me slagging them off in the slightest. They were signed to do a job. They did it incredibly well, and now we've grown, and maybe we've outgrown their potential. And that sounds really bad, but if we want to develop as a club, we're going to have to make tough decisions. I think Daniel Farke said that telling Alex Tete that they weren't going to renew his contract was the toughest thing he's had to do in football management. He's suffered relegations, but, you know, we don't develop a personal relationship with these players per se. Daniel will have been with Alex Tete daily for the past 4 years. And then you've got to tell him that the club that he's been at for 9 years aren't willing to renew his contract. That's got to be really difficult. And there will be so many of them difficult decisions this summer. Stuart Webber said when we got relegated that he'd been too loyal to certain players. We can't suffer that again, which is going to be really difficult. And it means we're going to see a lot of players going and coming. And naturally, when you are uprooting and you are making change, that could be sticky, and that could take time. So there we go. Jess Holland, what's Jess saying? Here we go. I don't want Onel to leave, but please don't take my Emmy away. Well, no, I don't want Onel to leave. And I would love it if there's almost like this Norwich City social club where even if you're not expected to play, you're just there and you're just involved and you're smoking your cigar like Onel does. That, by the way, that picture of him with the trophy and the cigar, just iconic, like genuinely iconic Norwich City imagery. But yeah, exactly that. This is a good point from Lou. Excited to watch Lungi's development next season. Yeah, me too. I really like Jakob Sorensen. Again, it's players like that, fringe players. Will Jakob Sorensen be able to develop in the Premier League? Will he be given the time and the space to be able to develop in the Premier League? I don't know. The Premier League isn't a league in which you really develop, is it? You need to be ready. And especially as well, we're forgetting here. Well, I'm forgetting because I'm the one speaking. Players like Dimitri Yanoulis and Andrew Omobamidele and players like that, right, haven't played in front of a crowd for Norwich City. Now, especially the younger players, Josh Martin, Andrew Omobamidele, there's players I'm forgetting here. They now have to factor in a crowd as well. And we're not just talking about a Carrow Road crowd. We're talking about Old Trafford when they're getting hounded by 75,000 people. That's very different to playing in an empty stadium at Reading where you can just do your thing. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. It's just your teammates getting on your back. If you make a mistake at Old Trafford, there's all kinds of carnage. So that's another factor to kind of think about. Anyway, the news tonight, Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber, watch this space, because the quotes that have come out today from Stuart Webber has outlined this. And I've been speaking for 25 minutes. Here's the facts you need to know. Stuart Webber has said that Daniel Farke wants to stay and the club will be willing to talk to him to stay. In terms of Stuart himself, he said that he wants to go abroad eventually, but it's probably not going to be as soon as he thought because of COVID, because of the implications surrounding visas, Brexit, blah, blah, blah. And he wants to, if the club want him and it's at the club's will, he will be willing to do a job here. Now, whether that translates into contracts that they agree with, time will tell. But we are certainly in a more positive position than what we were yesterday, where we just all assumed that come June 2022, at the end of this season coming up, Stuart and Daniel will be off, and everything that Norwich have done over the past 3 seasons have been centred around them. So really big day for Norwich City, and I suspect this will be a story that rumbles on for a little while, but positive all around. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Thursday evening, and I will see you again very soon. We've got loads of exciting content coming up. We're going to start doing some transfer videos. I'm going to be looking back at my predictions from the start of the season. I did predict Norwich to win the league. We did it. So that's good. Not too many other predictions came in. And there's just loads of really good stuff. And we're going to be bringing the podcast back very soon as well. So all is well here. Thank you very much for tuning in. And good news for Norwich City. Good time to be a Norwich City fan. See you later, everyone. Bye-bye.